Hi friends, it's nice to be with you again. You know that last week I spent some time asking the question, what does it look like for us to be in the desert with Jesus? Gonna pick up that theme a little bit more this week, and then I suspect towards the end of the week, we will transition towards getting ourselves ready for Holy Week. Last week, specifically, I was busy in the book of Exodus and a little bit with Numbers and Deuteronomy on what it meant to be in the desert with Jesus. And today I want to go with Jesus into the desert and look at a couple of these texts about the temptation of Jesus in the desert. The good news is I know last week I was dropping like entire chapters, maybe even a little bit more. That can feed that tendency of us moderns to just read for information instead of prayerfully being with the text. So the next couple days are going to be much shorter snippets, great opportunity for us to pray with Jesus. Remember, if you're still not familiar or comfortable praying with the scriptures, Seth and I both recorded videos last Monday. Seth did one on the imagination prayer, devised by St. Ignatius Loyola. I did one on Lectio Divina, holy reading. Both of those have pages attached to them so that you can read step-by-step instructions as well. What I want us to pray with today is the beginning of Matthew's Gospel, chapter 4, or the beginning of chapter 4 of Matthew's Gospel. Simply verses 1 through 4. This is a story that's probably pretty familiar to us. It's the temptation of Jesus in the desert by Satan. And again, I want us to read this and to prayerfully be with the Word for a little while. There were two things that struck my attention this morning as I was preparing for this reflection and as I was praying. One was that the Spirit of God led Jesus into the desert for the point of being tested. I don't know about you, but I appreciate that image. Like right now in the desert, in our desert of coronavirus, it can feel like we're out of control, like we don't have a plan, like the future is uncertain. And so to remember always that we are cared for and loved by God as if in the palm of God's hand. That the Spirit is the one who has led us as individuals and as families into the desert of our own homes, into the desert of our interior life, in order to be tempted. Seth recorded a good video that dropped last Thursday about Sabbath rest and about paying attention to our desires and our temptations, paying attention to what's going on in our heart and in our lives. Maybe, as we pray this passage from Matthew's Gospel, we would do a little examination of the last 2 weeks and to ask the question, what temptations have been coming up in our lives? Certainly, I hear from many folks using technology about the temptation to busyness, right? Like with the complete disruption, not knowing what to do and having a hard time just being. Temptation to control, temptation to escape. There are a lot of other temptations as well, but those are just a couple. What temptations have arisen in us as we've gone into the desert driven by the Spirit? Then the rest of the passage speaks about Jesus fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. One of my favorite lines is, and afterwards, he was hungry. You don't say. After 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry, And then he experiences the first temptation from Satan. Now, these three temptations are recapitulations. Jesus is making new the temptations of the people Israel in the desert. But when the people were hungry, they grumbled against Moses and against God. They complained. Jesus, differently, does not complain. He remains steadfast and faithful to God, even in the midst of his hunger. So the first temptation is commanded that these stones would become loaves of bread. But Jesus says, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God. This might be similar to the temptation stuff, but it might be different as well. What are the things that we think I can't live without? Yeah, we might post funny things on Facebook or Pinterest about coffee or wine or hunting or whatever. But really, this is a graced opportunity for us to see what it is that truly matters in our life and what are blessings and natural goods, but are things that can be let go of. One does not live on bread alone. As we pray into this text, are there things that perhaps for the next period of time, as we prepare to walk into Holy Week with Jesus, we might want to let go of, to try to discipline ourselves to pray into? So those are the two kind of prayer points that I'd invite us to. Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 4, temptation in the desert with Jesus. How are we tempted in these days? One does not live on bread alone. What are the things that I see now I might do without? Again, I invite you to spend 5 minutes, spend 20 minutes praying into these scriptures, allowing your heart to converse with the Lord, being honest, being open, being transparent with our God. Let's continue to pray for each other. Even though we're not gathering, we're still church. We still share in a communion of love. And it's going to be the grace of God that gets us through these times. God, who is our rock and our refuge and our resting place. Know that I'm praying for you. Have a blessed day.